Hello and welcome to the On the Couch podcast, the podcast that gives you the view from the therapist chair. I'm your host, John Dennis, a licensed professional counselor. You're listening to OTC episode 50 with Dr. Daniel LeGoff, creator of Lego Therapy. Wow. Episode 50. Welcome back, OTC listeners. I'm honored that you all have joined me for this milestone episode. It's still so unbelievable to me, the big 50. I've been saying the support that we've had for this show, the listeners that we have, the questions that we've received, and especially the guests that we've been honored to have on the show have made this project so worthwhile. I've always said if this helps even one person, then it's worth it. And we've done that and more. And I know for myself, when I first set out to do this project, I really needed to look at, okay, what's a frequency of putting out episodes that I can commit to and stick to, and really had to set things at once a month or every other week. And I know a lot of other podcasts crank out episodes, multiple times a week, and I know as a podcast listener that I love that. I love that there's a lot of content to consume, and I've had to kind of battle that a little bit as the host and the creator for this project of wanting to interview tons of people and increase the frequency of putting out episodes, but I just couldn't do that with, running an agency and carrying a full counseling caseload and all of the other things that I'm juggling. So I'm honored that you all have supported me thus far. And I'm really excited for what we have for the rest of season 2, and we already have a number of episodes recorded for season 3, and I'm working on a number of interviews with particular guests in season 3 that in addition to the ones that I've already got that I'm extremely excited about. So I always ask for listeners and for other people in my life that, if there's somebody that you think I should talk to or have on, if there's a concept within counseling and psychology or, a thought leader or a world changer that you think people need to know about, please reach out to me and let me know. I would love to get in touch with them and try to have them on. So, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for supporting this project. Lego-based therapy, when I first heard about it, I just, kind of marveled at it, and the idea just clicked. As I learned about it, I was kind of dumbfounded and in awe a bit of, I'd never heard of it before, actually before last year. And when I heard it, I just was like, I get it. I could see how this could be so helpful for so many people. I mean, it's just such an ingenious and creative treatment modality, and something that has been right in our faces for decades now. And when I found out about it and got to talking to Dr. LeGoff of, that the story that he tells in this interview of how he first, became aware of it and saw the interactions and started to grow from there, was just so amazing that I could completely see this playing out in, waiting rooms and counseling offices across the globe. And so for especially its use with autism spectrum disorder and making an impact on teaching social skills and interactions and communication and teamwork. It's an issue that so many families and parents struggle with, is how do you teach and promote social skills? Because for those that aren't aware, especially children who struggle with autism spectrum disorder, they often struggle mightily with those social interactions. When they play, they will play near other kids and sort of side by side, as they say, but they are typically not interacting with those other children. And sometimes, some of the repetitive or stereotyped kind of behaviors get in the way. Sometimes the sensory processing issues that they deal with get in the way. And like I said, the concept and the application of Lego-based therapy, you can see how it would really overcome some of those barriers and use the vehicle of Legos and that interest in, the creating and the building, and kind of forcing people to communicate with that love or that passion, and in ways that are easily transferable to other areas of life. So I loved so much that I got a chance to talk to Dr. LeGoff and the amazing work that he's doing. If you haven't seen the Lego Brickumentary and his part in it, or checked out his books, definitely do that. There is somebody in your life that needs this information because it could completely change either themselves or their loved one, their child, their family member. So I was so pleased that I was able to get a chance to sit down with him. Dr. Daniel LeGoff is a licensed pediatric neuropsychologist and the pioneer of Lego therapy. So he's a psychology graduate from the University of Winnipeg in Canada and received his master's and doctorate degrees in clinical psychology from Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. He then completed residency and postdoc training at Northwestern University Medical School in Chicago and the Queen's Medical Center in Honolulu. He specializes in the assessment and treatment of neurodevelopmental and neurobehavioral conditions in infants, children, and adolescents. In addition to that, he's written a number of books on Lego-based therapy and has his own Lego minifigure. I have here today on the Couch podcast Dr. Daniel LeGoff, who has pioneered Lego-based therapy and has just done so many things in and around the world of treating autism spectrum disorder. So, Dr. Dan, thanks for being on.
Oh, thanks, John. Glad to be here.
So I found out about you and the work that you do through just kind of stumbling across it, honestly, in watching the Lego Brickumentary with my daughter. Like, we were just watching, and all of a sudden, your part came on, and I was like, I've never even heard of this. I have to find out about it. So in terms of neuropsychology and your work, how did you come to this?
I got interested in neuroscience, basically, in high school. I was thinking about careers and what I wanted to do with my life. And I like the challenge of something as complex, but also meaningful in terms of being able to have some kind of an impact on people and health in the field of neuroscience. Once I got into school, I had supervisors that worked in psychology, and they were like, well, if you go to neurosciences, you're going to spend your whole life applying for grants. If you want to have a life and raise kids and own a home, maybe you should go into clinical. And I was like, I don't know, like psychotherapy, really? I don't know. So was really interested in the brain. So I kind of got interested in neuropsychology, and I thought it was, at that time, like in the early to mid 80s, neuropsychology was still somewhat of a fledgling profession. And there were some really exciting and interesting things happening in the field, and increases in the use and awareness of brain imaging and other kinds of electrophysiological technologies. So I was like, well, this is something we could really make a career out of.
Yes.
But I have autistic relatives, and I was fascinated by how human behavior could be so different as a result of something that I understood as a brain-based difference. And how did the brain translate into, your communication style, social interactions, and personality and behavior. Like, how did that all happen? So that was my interest. It was somewhat scientific, but also personal.
Okay. And then how did you come to start exploring Lego-based therapy and come to create that?
Yeah, I mean, I've told this story a million times, but essentially I'd started out in private practice after leaving my postdoctoral fellowship, and got myself a playroom, and I wanted to know what I should do with it. So I kind of had different areas that I wanted, kids to be able to explore. My wife at the time was an occupational therapist, and she gave me a bunch of ideas. So I had lots of playful materials, and I had a sand tray and a water station. I had some big bouncy foam blocks and things to roam, just sort of roam around. I had paints and a lot of creative materials, modeling clay, and of course I had a corner with some Lego in it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the kids I was seeing at the time were referred to me with anxiety disorders, adjustment difficulties, behavioral problems, ADHD, all kinds of things. And then more and more people seemed to think that I was a good fit for this emerging group of kids identified with having Asperger's disorder and high-functioning autism or autistic disorder. And because my interest was in that direction anyway, and I was kind of interested in neurodevelopment and brain injury and that sort of thing. And people said, "Oh, this new guy, Dr. Dan, seems to be interested in this population. Let's send him there."
Here you go.
They're miserable in the waiting room, and we don't like to deal with the IEP business, so let's send them to Dr. Dan. And so the kids that were coming into my playroom seemed to just go right to the Lego section. Wow. And so I was trying to figure out a way to incorporate some of the, techniques that I had learned and strategies that I was, trying to be an evidence-based practitioner of child psychology. And I was like, well, how do I integrate Lego with this? And then one day, I had been doing some Lego work with a kid, trying to figure out how to get him to communicate and interact with me. And I took him back up to the waiting room, and there was another kid waiting to come in who was holding a Lego set. And the two of them just saw each other and walked off in a corner and started talking to each other and interacting pretty enthusiastically. And the parents were struck by that, obviously, because they had seen
dumbfounded
initiate contact with another kid so spontaneously and sustain that interaction and have something meaningful to say to each other. So I asked the parents if they wouldn't mind if I saw them together, and I did. I started seeing them together. But I anticipated that having the two of them in the room with me, and having known them a little bit already in therapy, I knew that if they came in together, they would just engage in parallel play. And I didn't really see the point of that. I'd just be watching the two of them build Legos. Maybe they might enjoy it. They might eventually lead to some kind of a bond with each other, I thought. But in order to really facilitate more of a meaningful interaction, I decided to, do this dismantling of the process, deconstruct Lego. And I realized that there were really three separate kinds of tasks involved, and that was, finding the pieces that you need. If you've built Legos, I'm sure, you need to find the pieces. You got to follow the directions, and you got to put the pieces together. So I kind of, did sort of a forced division of labor, and I kept the instructions, and I made one kid the builder, and the other kid the part supplier. And I said, okay, now you need to give him this part here, and we're going to start with this green flat piece like this. It's got, 3 by 3. And, okay, that's where we start. Now you put that there. And we started just building together and collaborating. And they put up with it. They weren't happy about it, but as long as we were doing a Lego set together.
They were okay.
And I would entice them to come back. I would say, you know what, next week, I'd bring out the Lego catalog. And, hey, what do you think about this one? This Robin Hood thing looks really sexy. What about this one? Let's get that. And so they were willing to put up with me as long as I brought the Lego, and I let them build together. And then what I was watching was that there was this intense level of interaction because of the number of pieces and then all the complexities of where to put it. It's got to be just right, and you can't move on until it's exactly right, And they have to share this laborious process together, and then there's many opportunities for communication. It's not an occasional opportunity; it's constant. Mm-hmm. You know, if you build a Lego set with 150 pieces, there's 150 opportunities for
communication and interaction. Yeah.
Yep. So I was like, I like this. I can, I started being able to shape the interaction between them quite easily because I could kind of sit back and say, okay, this is what's going on. And then, sure enough, over time, other kids would come in, and this was another, insight I had, or sort of aha moment, was when other kids would ask about the Lego. They never asked me about the paintings or the clay or the dress up, or like they wouldn't come in and go, oh, other kids come here. They wouldn't ask about other kids. Occasionally a kid would see a picture of one of my kids on a bookshelf or something. Well, they weren't in my playroom; they were in my consulting room, and they would ask about my kids' photos. But most of the time, they didn't ask about other kids. They weren't socially curious, but they would come in and see the materials. And if there was Lego, then all of a sudden they were like, "Whoa, somebody made that," and they were interested. Hey, Dr. Dan, who made that? And then they would be like, "You're building with other kids in here, aren't you?"
I've caught you.
You're secretly doing Lego stuff, without me.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to capture that social interest, and other kids got interested. Oh, you've got this Lego thing going on. It's sort of from there. It spread very quickly. Other parents heard about it. Oh, you've got this thing going on. My kid's really into Lego. I want my kid part of that. And the next thing you know, I had like 5 or 6 groups going.
Well, yeah, and I was talking to a colleague yesterday, letting her know about talking with you, and I was saying it makes so much sense. When I heard about it and when I started to like dig into the process and what you've done, I was like, yeah, when you think about, like you said, like they wouldn't ask about, or they wouldn't go for, the paints or, the dress up clothes or things like that. They would go for the Legos, and especially with sensory processing stuff and things like that. Like, at least in my experience, I've never met a kid that is like, oh no, I don't touch Legos. Like I don't like the feel of the plastic or it's just like this immediate connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is, over the years, I have come across kids who didn't like Lego, and people
really?
ask me about them. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not a Lego kid. A good example was one of the kids who I'm still in touch with. I won't give you his whole story because I'll out him, but he's a very successful adult now. But he came into the Lego room. This was in New Jersey, and he was like, "No." And his parents had told him, "Oh, this would be really good for you. It's a social skills group." I tell parents, don't tell them that. It's not therapy. Don't tell them. It's a Lego club. And he was like, "I don't like Lego." And he came in and he was saying, there's nothing in here that I'm interested in. I said, "So what are you interested in?" And he said, weather. And then, you can tell when you hit a kid's topic.
Oh, yeah. They light up.
It's like when you start asking a foot fetishist about shoes. They're like, oh, let me tell you. So they, he starts talking about weather stations and storm tracking and the Weather Channel and, all this fun stuff about weather. And he sees that part of what's going on in the room, and he can tell, is that we're making these short animated films. And one of the stop motion series that we were making at the time was a news show. A news channel.
Gotta have weather.
Yeah. So there was Cindy Brickberg. She was a news reporter, and she was reporting on various kinds of news things. And the kids would create these scenarios of, like, what would a news anchor be drawn to, and then they would do stop motion animated film about it. Well, he was enthralled by the idea. Yeah, exactly. They need a weatherman. And I said, well, we could build you a weather studio. And you could shoot
Sold.
weather events.
Yeah.
He was like, what? He just suddenly the wheels were spinning, and he really wanted to join it. He wanted to dominate the group. He wanted to come in and tell everybody what to do, and that's not how it works. They're going to have to introduce you to the process.
You got to pay to play.
Yeah. And I had the same thing. I had a young girl, absolutely brilliant girl, who still occasionally in touch with her parents. Just a wonderful kid. Very creative, very imaginative, no social skills, and for girls, that's a complex issue. So
sure.
Her thing was animals and zoos, and she wanted to be she wanted to grow up to be a veterinarian that worked at a zoo. That was like her dream. And she came in, she looked around the room, didn't have any interest in a Lego, said, "Oh, a bunch of boys play here." But then she opened a drawer and it was full of Lego animals. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, you could talk to the guys and see if they want to build you a zoo. And then all of a sudden she was a little curly-haired maniac who wanted to dominate the group and get everybody to build a zoo. So I think that's one of the advantages of Lego is there's no interest that you can have that couldn't be incorporated into it, because you can build whatever you want.
Yeah. And I was going to say, especially in this day and age, I would imagine it's even more so because you think of like with us growing up, like our generation and around that time, like there wasn't a whole lot. Like there was the basic colors and characters and things like that, and now obviously they've kind of revamped everything after they kind of almost crashed.
Yeah, well, my childhood was Lego to some extent. I played with Lego, but it was pre-minifig.
Yeah.
We were lucky to find 4 wheels.
Yeah.
Yay,
they're all this.
Yeah,
they're all on that motorcycle. Yeah.
So it's definitely evolved, and that's the other. Amazing thing about Lego is how it's been able to sustain this level of creativity and expansion over the years. It hasn't been a smooth road for them, obviously. It's been a history of Lego, but
I also liked the at least touching on the brickumentary a little bit of the sort of that open source platform for suggesting ideas, and you'll see the creativity like really take off where. I forget if they hit like I think 10,000 likes or whatever, people supporting like we want that then they'll create it. And so I got to ask, are you able to get any for yourself, like any pieces that you're like, can I get one made of me, or like a Freudian Lego set, or
Lego has created a Dr. Dan minifig just for me.
That is awesome.
But that's it. I actually, my kids still have the Lego that they had growing up, and I didn't keep any of it, so I don't own any Lego.
Nice.
But
that's still pretty cool to have a minifig.
I've started some pretty elaborate collections. Like in the brickumentary, there was that was recorded at Yale schools in New Jersey, and those guys gave me a huge budget, so that was pretty impressive. And I went in onto like online. I wasn't buying just new Lego. I was getting collections that were still in the box from the 1970s and stuff like that. It was okay. So you can go pretty into some pretty deep pockets of well, and especially now that there's people are willing to pay that much for it, sure. Put it up on eBay or I remember when I first started doing this kind of stuff, Bricklink, which was like an online clearinghouse for used Lego, was just a spreadsheet and with a bunch of email addresses. Like you'd have to get all of these people directly to get. And now it's this clearinghouse. It's very sophisticated and very advanced. So Lego has definitely expanded in terms of the user interface. Okay. It's a lot easier. But unfortunately, as you know, I work a lot internationally, and that's not the case for a lot of people, especially like in South America and Asia. Certain areas, it's very hard to get Lego. It's very, very expensive. Outside of the United States and Great Britain or United Kingdom, they have much less. Like in Europe, like Western parts of Europe, and in the United States, they have a lot of access. But internationally, it's
not as much.
Yeah, and it's very expensive.
So, kind of, zooming out a little bit, walk me through what, a family shows up for Lego-based therapy. What does it entail? I'm assuming they already know what it is a little bit, and you've sort of screened for, I think they'd be a good fit, or, what's it look like when they get there?
Yeah, the screening part is important, and that's part of the training. When I do a training, we talk a lot about the kinds of kids that benefit from this. Not all kids do.
Sure.
Primarily, it's what we would call internalizing conditions, certainly autistic spectrum, but also social anxiety, selective mutism, generalized anxiety, kids with depression, reactive attachment, more like kids with adjustment difficulties to life events, as well as, the sort of neurodevelopmental kids. I'd say a lot of kids who can't do sports. If your kid's not making it on the soccer field, they're going to miss out in important elements of their social development. So, the kind of kids that might benefit from Boy Scouts, but Boy Scouts, doesn't often have a therapeutic goal. There isn't really a remedial component to it. You kind of struggle through it. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of our kids could benefit from something like that. Whereas with the Lego therapy approach, it really is therapeutic, and it's designed for that kind of kid who probably isn't going to make it on the playground on their own and needs definite, some brushing up and an opportunity to do this in a safe and environment with people who know how to coach them about social interaction. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of population of kids we're geared for. Not kids that are acting out behaviorally and, so the ADHD, oppositional defiant, conduct disorder.
Not as much.
No, especially if you mix them.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine this working. Like, I have seen classrooms of kids with behavioral disorders who saw that the kids with Asperger's down the hall were having Lego club, and
I want Lego.
Yeah, exactly. Big interest. But you can guarantee all your, I should say guarantee, but, your Star Wars minifigs are going to go missing, and you're going to have issues with kids dismantling each other's work, and just set up for that.
Like you said, with the two others, wanting to take over and direct everybody, or the more explosive interactions. You
can come in with a unilateral agenda, but our kids aren't going to punch anybody. It's different. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Actually, I have actually told some situations. Kids are
come to think of it, I have broke up a few.
Almost coming to blows over the it's a different framework.
Yeah.
But the introduction to the process of it usually, involves just explaining to parents, and most parents are sold just hearing about it.
Yeah.
A bunch of kids get together.
I will bring them where and when.
Interact and communicate using Lego. I'm there. They get it. It has a real, what they call face validity. I can see how this is going to work. And once they understand, okay, there's a structure to it. The kids have levels that they work through. It's kind of like martial arts. You start off as a white belt, then you get a yellow belt, then you get an orange belt. The kids get the levels. I mean, because they all play video games these days, they kind of get the idea to go from this level to that level. But they don't even need to have that part explained to them. They're sold. And then it really depends at that point whether you're introducing them to a fixed Lego room. In the manual, there's some discussion about this. When I do trainings now, we talk a lot about the setting. Where is this going to happen? Are you going to have a fixed space? Mm-hmm. Are you going to be sharing space? Is the Lego going to be portable? Going to have to go back in the closet and come back out again because you're sharing the room with an OT and a speech pathologist? Or is it traveling? Are you going to have this stuff coming out of the trunk of your car?
So I'm assuming your preference is for fixed.
It carries a lot of weight, having a Lego room, and I've had some pretty exciting looking Lego rooms.
Yeah.
And, with the walls lined with bookshelves that are covered with, Lego creation.
Yeah.
Freestyle end sets and collections, and then, a lot of table space with, train systems running, and, a whole Lego city, and then a country scene, and a bunch of, kids.
Well, I would imagine that sells the kid. As soon as they enter that room, they're just like.
Well, just as importantly, it sells the parents, and even more importantly, it sells the dad. Because I think that's one of the big problems with therapy and schools these days, honestly, and I know this gets me in trouble when I say this, but those are female-dominated worlds, you know.
A lot of times, yeah.
I used to be able to go to schools and just say hi to the secretary at the desk and go right to a classroom, you know. And now it's like trying to get on an airplane.
Yeah.
You go through layers of security to get to a school and to be anywhere near kids.
Yeah.
Like I used to go to my own kids' school sometimes, and I would just wander out the playground and just watch kids and observe and make notes, you know, because I wanted to know what does typical child behavior look like.
Oh yeah, today you'd have SWAT.
I'm like out there with a stopwatch and I'm like making notes on how.
Yeah, that's just Dr. Dan. He's out there.
Yeah. I'm studying normal play because I want to know, because there are big gender differences and there's obviously age differences, and there aren't a lot of published norms about playground behavior. So when we coach kids about what's typical and what's going to be effective for them on the playground or in less structured settings, if an adult isn't telling you what to do with your friends, how does that go? And what's typical? And it changes all the time. How kids play, what they talk about, how they interact, you know, how much eye contact do they make, what kind of gestures do they use, that kind of thing. And nowadays it's so female dominated that I can see typical boy behavior happening and teachers correcting it. They're so unfamiliar with normal boy play that they'll tell kids knock that off, even though it's perfectly normal. So there's a shaping of social interaction that often ignores the fact that social engagement between boys and girls is going to be different. And I have, I've had colleagues who run social skills groups who will tell the boys to do things that are not appropriate socially, like shaking hands and making eye contact and introducing yourself by name when you meet someone. Boys don't do that. 8-year-old boys don't shake hands. They don't introduce themselves by name. They don't even high five anymore. Like I used to, boys, we're all going to give each other a high five and tell each other what a good thing we had this morning. Like kids
don't do that. Yeah.
So I think understanding social behavior in boys is important, and it's a moving target. So that does require input, and one of the best places to get it is from dad, because they're and unfortunately a lot of them get discouraged, because their kid is the kid on the soccer field who's just like one of the coaches like shaking his head, and the problem is that there's so much embedded social material that if you watch a kid who's socially adept, and it's not always the star pupil or whatever, but a kid who just gets social cues, a socially intelligent kid, play baseball. He does not walk up to the plate when it's his turn to bat and stand there with the bat, right? There's a whole lot of stuff happening before he gets there.
Yeah.
He's knocking the dirt out of his cleats. He's spitting, a little crotch grab. He adjusts his hat. Yep. All those little gestures. He's spitting in his hands. He's swinging the bat. He's getting his own. I mean, nobody taught him that. He watches baseball on television. He watches his dad play or his brother play, or he watches the older kids play, and he's imitating baseball. He's imitating what he sees. And kids with social learning difficulties don't. So they do. They just walk right up to the plate and stare at the pitcher and hold the bat up stiffly. And,
I'm ready.
Waiting for the ball to come. And it's even worse in a very fluid, dynamic situation like soccer. How do you know how to behave on the soccer field where everybody's scrumming around the ball? If you're a good
little
player,
magnets.
Yeah, you learn from your dad and your big brother or whoever, or your big sister or whatever. You start learning about the game in ways that are more automatic, and you don't have to think about it.
So, do you often invite parents in terms of like having them play, like engage in the Lego therapy and take one of the roles at all, or yeah?
Not unless I'm specifically trying to help them with Lego stuff at home. I make a pretty clear boundary between what is therapy and what is parenting. I don't want parents to be therapists. I don't like that idea that we make parents therapists. They have to be parents. I mean, I'll coach them about being a good parent, but I won't tell them how to be a therapist with their own kids. And we try to keep, if we have a fixed Lego space, certainly if there's a room where Lego therapy is happening, that's for the kids. I really don't like parents who want to watch Lego Club or who want videos of it. It's not, I think it really pops the bubble of the club idea. You know, this is our space, because I really want the focus to be on peer identification. So kids aren't there because their parents brought them there. Kids aren't there because their teacher thought it was a good idea to refer them to the district to get, you know, a social development therapy or something. Like, the reason they're there is because they love Lego and they want to be with their friends. And we start sending adults into the room to observe them and record them. Then they're like, well, what's this all about? Like, you know, I've had news crews come into my Lego club, and I tell them, look, guys, this is their time. You know, they've waited all week to come in here. Don't start interrupting them with questions and stuff. Like, don't be intrusive. You know, it's okay for you to. We've already got the parents' permission. You can record with Lego, but don't make a mess of it. Because to them, this is really a real deal. These are real relationships. This is important to them. This is something that they really enthusiastically pursue, and they're working on their levels and they're working on their projects. So throwing parents in there almost inevitably goes badly. Okay. And same thing with teachers and stuff. Teachers come in there and they want to make it into a classroom. That's one of the things I have a really hard time conveying to other people that I've trained with. Or worse is when I see people trying to do Lego therapy who've never met me. And there's lots of those. Internationally, I keep running into people who are Lego therapy experts that never met me. Sure. And they really don't get how different this is from a classroom. This is not learning time. This isn't learning social skills. This is a bunch of kids having the most fun they ever had. You know, they love Lego Club. They're really enjoying it. They're into it, and they're into each other, and their joint accomplishment. And, you know, this is our Lego Club, and these are my buds, and they want to show their parents what we did together. And it'd be like, you know, playing soccer or basketball or something, just sending a parent out there to try to get the game going. It's like, oh, we're down by 10 points. Send dad in. No, can't do that. They have to do it themselves.
Now, in terms of you were talking about the three different roles, like, you know, sort of deconstructing the Lego building experience. So does that rotate? Is that, you know, do you have a lot of issues where, you know, you have a kid that's like, I don't want to, you know, be the one that's finding the stuff. I want to be the one building, you know? Yeah. And how do you deal with that?
That is, you're right. We take turns. Typically, what I would tell people is if you're doing the standard triad model where you've got three kids and an engineer who has the instructions, a builder who's putting the pieces together, a parts supplier who's finding the pieces and giving the correct pieces in the right sequence to the builder, then they get about a third of the way through the set. An easy way to do that is you look at the end of the set. There's like, say, 60 steps. Well, you know, at step 20, you're going to switch. Yeah. And everybody takes a different role. I mean, it's. Sometimes you kind of switch it more often if there's a lot of steps, and it's a neat practice for this idea of perspective taking or empathy, theory of mind. Understanding what it was like, because right in the immediate here and now, you know exactly what it was like for that person who's looking for the pieces because you were just doing that. And this is the cool thing about it is, in order for you to get your kind of unilateral agenda met, which is to build the set, you have to make this person work better, right? And so your mental focus is really on, how do I get this person to do a better job while I'm doing my job? And you understand what would help. And so when a part supplier who is just a builder is looking at the builder, they're like, oh, you know what would be really cool is if the pieces were lined up in order and I just like set them out, and then he would know exactly, or I could put them more or less in the direction of where they're supposed to be in the set. And then you start thinking, how can I be more helpful to this person so that we can get this done? Because I really want this project to happen. I don't want to leave this until next week, or I don't want this set incomplete at the end of the hour or whatever. So there's a strong motivation for them to collaborate. And that creates this pressure for them to really think about how the other person's thinking and what they're focused on, their point of view. What are they looking at? and you'll see them like trying to get their head up next to them to see what they're, oh, I see what you're looking at. Or they want to share the directions. They're like, okay, let me see what you're, oh, I see, okay. And we're sharing information verbally and non-verbally in a very intense way.
Wow. And when you get to, that idea of freestyle versus, instructional builds, I don't know. For me, I like the instructional. Like I'm not able to freestyle. We started watching the Lego Master show on Fox with and I just, even with my kids in my basement, I'm like, I need the instructions. Like I can't, sorry. Yeah. How do you find that goes in the room with doing freestyle builds? You're listening to OTC Episode 50 with Dr. Daniel LeGoff, creator of Lego Therapy. We'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsor.
Would you like to talk to a counselor but can't find the time? Would you rather talk to someone from the comfort of your own home? If so, Parenting and Family Solutions is here to help. We now offer teletherapy to all clients who reside in the state of Pennsylvania. Using our secure portal, you can have a video session with your counselor using a laptop, desktop computer, or smartphone. Visit our website to learn more at www.parentfamilysolutions.com or give us a call at 717-602-5560 to see if teletherapy might be a good fit for you. Let us help you build a stronger family and a healthier you.
How do you find that goes in the room with doing freestyle builds?
Yeah, I mean, now we're getting into the manual kind of stuff. It does evolve. Obviously it goes from the triad model and where we're switching roles. That's kind of like the entry level to Lego Club. At the level of, when you're just doing building of sets, you're working on what we call builder skills. It's a little confusing because there is a builder in the three different roles: engineer, builder, and parts supplier. But there's also a level system. And so when kids come into Lego Club for the first time, they're introduced to other kids. If there's an ongoing group, or they're all meeting for the first time, which is kind of unusual. But I mean, occasionally when people start, they have to start with a group. And they're all what we call Lego helpers. And helpers basically go find pieces and do the tasks of the triad model and putting sets together. Or they may be doing things like sorting Lego. Like we get freestyle collections donated, for instance, to the club, and then we have to clean the pieces and sort them into bins, so that we have freestyle materials. So there's a lot of kind of menial, repetitive tasks that are involved in maintaining a Lego collection. And that's what Lego helpers do. Now, once you've demonstrated to the group that you can follow directions, put pieces together appropriately and adequately and accurately and quickly, and then builder, engineer, and parts supplier tasks, then the other kids are encouraged by the therapist to consider whether this person might be a builder. And if we decide, you're pretty good at this stuff, you can build sets, you're a competent set builder, then you get a builder's certificate, and that's like getting your yellow belt. And so we have a little ceremony, and the other kids, we print out a Lego certificate, and the other kids sign it. The other kids all say, well, we undersigned here, agree that this person has achieved the level of Lego builder. And the kid gets to go out to the waiting room with his Lego builder certificate and show it to his parents. And these kids are like so excited. I'm a builder. And then, so then they have to go to the next level. So the next level, after you've accomplished being a competent builder, is to become a Lego creator. And what a Lego creator does is make, design, and put together freestyle sets, or their own sets to create things. And that involves a lot of different skills. So there's imagination, but also sort of an engineering and design aspect to it. But then there's also collaboration. You have to pitch the idea to the other group members and say, I really want to build X because I want to do this with it, or it's going to be part of this collection. Or they have to have some kind of justification for their freestyle creation. So they have to pitch an idea. They have to sketch it out, either literally, with drawings, or they have to sort of imaginatively tell them what it's going to look like and how this is all going to happen, and with the part, where they're going to get the parts. Do we have the pieces for this? Do we have, the materials to build it? If not, how are we going to get them? So you come up with a plan. And if you're able to do that, the other kids go, wow, okay, so you seem to have some, abilities, some skill with the process. You can be a Lego creator, and then you get to the Lego creator level. Now, in that process, there's different roles, obviously, slightly different than just putting a set together. Mm-hmm. And so sort of there's more of a leadership and more of a designer, engineer level of accomplishment that happens.
I don't think I would have gotten that certificate. I think I would have gotten stuck at the the builder.
The kids who get stuck and they really want to move up to the next level, because there's levels above that. So they have to get through Creator in order to get to Lego Master. So, and then Lego Master is where you got to get to before you become Lego Genius. So, but to get from Lego Builder to Lego Creator, you can do some things other than just come up with your own idea and engineer it. So, for instance, some kids who really can't quite master the design element, what we would do is we'd say, okay, how about if we just took a set? Like I remember taking a kid and he had this real fascination with helicopters. And I said, why don't we take this helicopter here as like a rescue helicopter? And why don't you take that rescue helicopter and redesign it or retool it, make the whole thing black. Now it's a military assault helicopter, it's a stealth helicopter or something. You're going to make something.
It's Airwolf.
You're going to take this basic design, or you're going to make it a TV news helicopter, where you're going to make the whole thing in your favorite color, red or yellow, or there's going to be this. No, you're going to make it a different. So there's some way of taking a building or a structure or a vehicle from set that you've seen, and
changing it, adapting.
Basing your design.
Which, I mean, as we're talking about it, sounds so simple, but obviously that is not. That idea of going from, concrete to abstract and, non-black and white sort of thinking and creativity is very difficult for these populations. And I don't know, as you're talking about it, I'm like just the genius of it, of like the application to so many things, of like helping them prepare for the job world and like working together as a team, or like engineering, obviously, and the creativity side of it.
I try to emphasize that a lot. I don't think Lego Club is really about making friends. I mean, that's part of what happens. But honestly, for a lot of people, especially parents of kids with high functioning autism or Asperger's disorder, who have a lot of intelligence and a lot of talent, they don't want to see these kids spend the rest of their lives playing video games in their basement.
Yeah.
And there is a glass ceiling out there for a lot of kids. If they get employment at all, and the unemployment rate among people with mild autistic conditions is very high. They often wind up in a cubicle somewhere, because nobody wants to go golfing with them. Nobody wants to hang with that guy. So they don't want them in charge of other people. They don't want them to become a manager. They have to be able to communicate their ideas. They have to be able to collaborate. They have to be able to work on someone else's ideas. They can't always be in charge. So it can't be just a kid busting into the Lego room and saying, I want to build a zoo. Because if you do that at work, you get fired, or you certainly don't get promoted. Nobody wants to be the manager if that's your style of interacting. So this idea of collaborating, of compromise, of taking turns, like, okay, I'll work on your idea. And they really do this. This trading favors is a huge thing. People will find out, you're really good at, like, there's some kids who aren't particularly good at Lego building, but they're really good at, like, writing. Girls are often good at that. So the the writing aspect of it, other kids are not, and they're like, oh, okay, you can write scripts. I really want to make a movie, and I don't want to write the script. So you can help me with my script, and then I'll help you build sets for your movie. Or someone else wants to build some, set, and they need people to find a bunch of pieces. Like someone wants to build a spooky castle for a Halloween scene, and they want other kids to go and find gray and black pieces for them for their spooky castle. Well, they have to call in favors from other kids for that. So they might, trade some other skill set and collaborate together.
Man, yeah, just the bartering and the communication of that. That's
yeah. So people who walk in a Lego club, and I've had other therapists come and visit, and they'll come in and they're really surprised at how work-like an environment it is. These kids aren't just playing. I mean, they do, but it's very focused, and there's a lot of pretty serious stuff going on in terms of their relationships, and they take it seriously.
So you were saying, you've recently had interviews, and I know you went to Kuala Lumpur. You were saying, I mean, you've traveled quite a bit for doing workshops. I know you were saying you have a couple coming up in India. Is that correct? So, and typically you're kind of going through and training them and explaining what Lego-based therapy is, and then are you starting to certify them in this, or can you kind of unpack that for me?
Yeah, I mean, I originally did training for people that I was working with. So if I was doing Lego-based therapy within an organization or within my practice, and I had some people that were interested in doing it with me, and that was one of the reasons why I pulled some data together for the first study that I published, was because other people got interested, and I'm like, wow, this seems to be working. Like I really am getting a lot of good feedback from parents, and I'm getting a lot of good feedback from educators about how kids are improving socially, but I didn't have any formal outcome studies or data that I could hang my hat on and say, okay, this is really working. The kids seem to love it, and I seem to be seeing changes in the Lego therapy room, But so in order for me to say, okay, this is really something, as opposed to it's just me and my particular idiosyncrasies, I had to get make sure that other people could do it. And so when I had moved to New Jersey and was trying to convince some of the folks that I was working with there at Bancroft, who were ABA-based people and good scientists, they were obviously skeptical that this was anything more than just a playroom and an indulgence for me. So they wanted to know, how does this work? And I had done an initial study. It came out in 2004, and then I followed it up with a longer-term outcome study, which was actually published in collaboration with a psychologist who was also working at Bancroft at the time, Mike Sherman. Shout out to Mike out there. Mike Sherman is a really good psychologist. Then they were kind of taking me seriously, but this wasn't quite ABA, but they were like, oh, you do seem to have some data anyway. It's like there is some evidence base for this.
We'll throw you a bone here.
Yeah, I was presenting at a conference that was sponsored by Bancroft, and we had Simon Baron-Cohen come from Cambridge. And as you know, I'm a big Simon Baron-Cohen fan, and he's obviously a big name in the autism world. And he actually sat in on my talk about Lego therapy. And I did a demonstration project. I had volunteers come down from the audience, and we sat at a little table, and I was showing them how we do the triad, the engineer, the part supplier, and the builder. And there was Simon Baron-Cohen at the sitting at the table building Legos with the other. And he said to me afterwards, there might be something to this.
Yeah.
It seems to really capture. He said at the time he was promoting his book, The Essential Difference, which was about how male and female brains are different, and how that affects play, and how it affects social development and empathy, and this idea of systematic reasoning versus social reasoning is different in girls and boys. So Simon said, well, this is a very systematic thing, this Lego, and it capitalizes on their systematic reasoning abilities by making that the basis for social reasoning. And so you can see that there was this pressure utilizing this system to develop perspective taking and empathy and things like that. So, and social reasoning and problem solving. And he said, yeah, this seems to make sense. So he went back to Cambridge, and he talked to one of his graduate students. Her name was Georgina Owens. And Gina came and stayed with me for a while in New Jersey and just followed me around and came to my Lego groups with me. Wonderful. Now she's a very wonderful psychologist in her own right, and she needed to know what to do because she wanted to do her doctoral dissertation on Lego therapy. Wow. And wanted to replicate it at Cambridge. So she had this idea that, there were some gaps that needed to be filled in the information that was provided by the couple of studies that I had published, including the fact that we had never done a randomized controlled study. I had never assigned kids to different groups and compared outcomes. I had done pre-existing groups compared with groups that didn't, receive them. In the second study, I did a comparison group. The first study was a timeline design where I had kids that were on a waiting list, and then I, just sort of looked at their social functioning over time, being on a waiting list, and then I compared them to a treatment outcome group. But she wanted to do a randomized controlled study of it at Cambridge, and she used undergraduate volunteers as therapists. That was kind of important because it was, but in order for her to do that, I had to write a manual. Getting back around to the point that I started with.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
I didn't want to write a manual. I didn't want this manualized. And I had discussions with other people that were interested in the methodology at the time, including some of the grad students, the postdocs that I was working with at Bancroft. And I said, this is kind of its own thing, and I could see that someone else might take it and do something different with it. I think the Lego material is a draw, and I think some of the basic structure of it is very interesting. I think we get kids to collaborate. But I said, I don't know, maybe someone would do something better with it. I don't want to manualize it and preclude that someone else can do this better. I don't want people just trying to do it my way. And so we had this debate about the manual. But in order for somebody to replicate it and to show that it could be done without me, that was
had to have the manual. Yep.
Right. So I wrote the manual for Gina, and then she did her study and wrote her doctoral thesis, and then 2008 she published it. And that really kind of got a lot of people's attention, because now it wasn't just, that crazy Dr. Dan guy doing this stuff. It was, Georgina Owens and the,
crazy Dr. Dan guy.
Well, that was, the famous son of Barry Cohen.
Yes.
Giving it legitimacy. And so it was sometime after that, their study was published, and people started contacting Simon because he's kind of an accessible target. He's very well known. And so people were going to, to Professor Baron Cohen and saying, how do I start Lego Club? It sounds very interesting. And he was like, well, we have this manual, but, it's just a pile of paper that Dr. Dan wrote at this point. So a group of us got together and decided we were going to try to make this into a publishable manual at Simon's insistence. Simon was like, I'm tired of taking all these calls about Lego Club. So you guys are going to
please write this.
Yeah, you're going to publish it to make it accessible. So we did, and we published the manual in 2014, I think it was. And then since then it's been translated into 5 other languages, and now it's used in over 50 countries. So yeah, that manual sold a lot. And it was definitely a worthwhile project. So people got their hands on the manual, but now the problem is they want to follow the manual and they don't get it. But the initial message was, this has got to be fun. Uh-huh. This is a club. These kids need to come in and, okay, this is some ways to kind of set up and run your club, but you got to individualize it, and it's got to be creative, and it's got to be playful. And a lot of people I see trying to replicate my method, it's very stilted and very stiff. They're trying to make it a classroom.
Okay. Now, you my understanding is you're working. You went from the manual, then you had a second book. You were saying you're coming out with a third book.
Yes.
And are you able to speak to that, or when that's supposed to hit?
Sure.
Or?
The first book was just a manual, and it had the snippets of examples of like conversations we'd be having, or what the core methodology looked like in terms of like what we were doing in the room with the kids while they were doing the Lego stuff. Because the Lego therapists are making a mistake when they get too involved in the actual Lego building.
Okay.
That is like the dad running out on like
onto the soccer field.
With the coach going out there on the basketball court and grabbing the ball, and so we don't send the therapist into the fray. Occasionally they'll help them out with some guidance, but most of the time we want to stay out of that. And I call it being a border collie. I don't know if I'm a big fan of border collies. Yeah, they hurt. They're on the outside. They get everybody doing the thing, and then they just stay, sort of unobtrusively guiding the overall process. But the kind of coaching moment you have is like, well, there's a meltdown, there's a conflict that seems to be irresolvable, and what you want to do is send your message in through the other kids. And so you're kind of coaching the other kids about problem solving, and other therapists are often surprised to see how much negative affect and kind of behavioral instability and emotion I will tolerate before stepping in as an adult. I let it really go far.
You let it play out and see how it goes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I don't send kids out of the room. I solve the problem in the room because it's real to them. Mm-hmm. And when there's emotions, it means it's real. Like they're taking this stuff seriously, and they're invested in these relationships, and they're ready to punch each other because this is important to them. And that's when I kind of coach them about solving the problem a little bit. So there wasn't enough of that in the first book. I kind of wanted that to be more of that. So that was the second book. So what I did was I wrote about the actual kids. I did a series of case studies, and I wrote about, and most of those kids, so in order to put those kids in the book, I had to go and contact them all and get their permission. So they're disguised, obviously, and I didn't use their real details. But I figured that if some family read the book and they'd be like, yeah, that's all, they would recognize themselves. I didn't want to do that. So so those kids, a lot of them I'm still in touch with. And I wanted to tell their story and say, well, this is what it was really like. This is what actually happened. And this is what was going on in the room. Now, I wanted to write a book, or the publisher wants me to write another book. And
let's be real.
Yeah. And they asked about ideas I had, and I had suggested an advanced topics book, which would be more of like what's in the second book, but getting more into a theoretical deconstruction of what happened in Lego Club, because Lego Club really just happened. I didn't have a theoretical framework for it. I didn't have some idea. Well,
yeah, it grew out of two kids connecting in a waiting room.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, this seems to be working. Let's just go with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll build the rest of the airplane later.
Yeah, it was just built out of necessity. It was just, okay, let's just run with it. And evolved over time, and just kind of following my nose as to what seemed to be working or not. I didn't have an overarching theoretical idea. But since then, people have suggested, like, oh, this is consistent with what other people are doing in terms of like natural reinforcement of social behavior and modeling, and there's all kinds of theoretical ways to deconstruct this. And I thought, well, maybe people want to hear that. People want to know the technical sides of how this all works. I'm going to do an advanced topic book. And the publisher said no. What most people seem to be interested in is how do people use this who don't have access to a Lego Club, who don't have access to a therapist.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of people out there. A lot of people.
I am interested in the first, but I'm definitely interested in the second.
Yeah. So like, how do parents do this?
Well, especially for what you were saying with like internationally, where they don't have access to even like the Lego sets, I imagine their access to the mental health services is even less. So yeah.
But over the years, I have coached parents a lot about how do you help your kid develop socially. It's interesting because a lot of times I'm talking to parents who themselves are not particularly social. And unfortunately, often it's the dad. So the typical scenario would be a meeting with the mom, and the mom is the one who comes to the IEP meetings and takes the kid to the doctor and comes to the therapist. And then one day, mom can't make it because she's got something going on. And dad shows up in the waiting room, and okay. then
Light bulb.
Like, yeah, this is where this comes from. Dad's an engineer, dad's a doctor, dad's an architect, and they're just really socially odd people. I shouldn't say that. Sorry, Dad. But, social functioning in men is very different. And coaching a kid to be good or effective with other kids socially is not something that we're all great at. Because interestingly enough, we're not taught that. And even schools aren't particularly good at teaching it because it's something that happens in kids normally on its own.
Well,
social development typically just evolves in typical kids on its own. You don't have to coach it.
Well, and thinking back to a lot of the hallmark stereotypical father-son stuff, it's, doing an activity, but there's not a lot of social, emotional interaction in, building the car, going hunting, there are bits and pieces, but yeah.
Well, social functioning in men, first of all, is much more what I call triangulated than it is with women. And the priority for men is the activity, not the social
task.
bonding.
Yeah.
Right? So you and I are focused on something here, which is we're watching the game, we're working on that car or motorcycle or go-kart or whatever hobby thing that we've got going. And then there's this level of communication that happens between us. But men can be quite good friends through bonding over a common interest or activity or accomplishment without knowing a lot about each other personally.
Oh, yeah, that's the cliche of we spent all day together. Oh, how's his family? I don't know. We never talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah, or what's his name? Yeah,
no idea.
I don't know.
Can't remember.
But we're buds.
Yeah.
See, with women, the amount of social disclosures, like fire hoses going off. Their bonding happens through shared information, shared, personal context. And so, I used to take my kids to the playground, and they'd be, playing with the jungle gym and the sandbox. And there'd be some mom sitting next to me, and she would start asking me all these personal questions. Where am I from? What do I do? Are those my kids? How old are they? Where do they go to school? And then but if it was another guy, you'd get up and walk away. He's some freak asking me questions. So, men have that, kind of common bond through activity, and women have activities, but the point of the activity is to allow them to interact socially.
The bond, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a much stronger emotional connection, which makes helping girls with autistic conditions a little more complicated because the bar is higher in terms of expectations even early on. Like kindergarten girls know how to dress already, and they have very elaborate and well-rehearsed social activities before first grade. And some of those kids, they can babysit when they're 6 years old. I call them the bossy girl. The bossy girls have this, very well-developed social caregiving role, and they understand social relationships at a level that's almost adult-like. And then to take the same, 5-year-old boy has no concept.
Yeah, I'm living that right now.
Yeah. I think it's like a mildly autistic kid and send them out in the playground. It's hit or miss whether they're going to interact with another kid or not. It's almost random. Mm-hmm. Their duration of social interaction on the playground is seconds, the amount of contact.
Now, with that book, is do you have a projected date for that? Is the publisher hey, give me that?
Yeah. I am still writing, so I don't know. It's not going to be. Hopefully, it will be this year.
Okay.
So it's not in
I don't want to put pressure, but yeah.
Yeah. But this is a book I really want to write with dads in mind, especially, but encouraging, obviously, so moms take a large amount of responsibility for social development in their kids right now. For dads, I would encourage them to be more active with this, because boys do want to identify with their dads and to learn to be social through their dads. So there's some things that you need to do, like take your kid out with your friends so they can see how do you interact with your buddy. do things together with other families. But there's also a bunch of little strategies that people don't think about that I do because I have to work with this population and work with schools. Like identify the coolest kid in your class. Who's the kid that all the other kids, if that kid has a birthday party, they want to go. Right? Or who is the kid who everybody's birthday party they get invited to? Or who's the kid who has the prize play date? Like the prize play date would be with Chad. Okay, so Chad is like the cool kid. He can skateboard. He's got long hair. He's like whatever it is. He's the best.
Sounds like we're describing Spicoli.
Yeah, he's the best Fortnite player. He's like the best soccer player. Whatever. He's a cool kid. We'll make sure your kid says hi to the cool kid, and they're gonna be like, I don't know Chad. And like, I know you don't know Chad, but say hi to him. He's a cool kid. He'll say hi back. He's got good social skills. He's not going to snub you. He's going to say, because most cool kids that people think, oh, cool, they're the popular
standoffish
kid,
and
jerk. No,
how dare you talk to me?
Kids are popular because they're nice. Like I utilize that group of people. Those kids, I can spot them on the playground. I see them in classrooms. They're helpful. They're nice, helpful kids. Well, you invite that kid on a play date, and you make sure it's the best darn play date he ever went on in his life. Like you're going to take him to Dave and Buster's and blow $100 on him, or do something really fantastic. And the next time he sees your kid, he's going to be like, yeah. And the other kid's going to go like, oh, he knows Chad. So there's a bunch of like classroom strategies. Like I once made a huge difference in a kid's social life by using a cueing device. There's this little piece of machinery we used to use called a motive aider. It's a little thing you wear, and it's a signaling device. It's silent, and you can set it on a timer, and you can even make the timer random, sort of like a variable ratio of reinforcement. So the thing, it's a cueing device that signals you to do something or not do something. So if you're engaging in stereotype behavior, if you have this tendency to stick your fingers in your nose, your mouth, or you flap your hands, or you twiddle your hair, or you don't look at people and you don't smile, or you have this grimace on your face, or whatever it is, we're going to try to change in your social behavior. We can cue you using something unobtrusive, and stick it in your pocket, clip it on your belt, and I had a kid just smile. Just look around the room, look at other people, and smile. He was instantly socially popular. Like it just changed his social life. Because otherwise he's just sitting there self-absorbed,
grimacing.
Grimacing, not noticing other people were looking at him, not engaging socially, not, noticing other kids in the room. Man. So I said, okay, when you get this signal, look around the room and smile. And the kids said, oh, he's friendly. And so they started approaching him on the playground. So, I think there are some ways of reaching into your kids' social life and into their environment, inviting other kids to participate with you, getting your kids, coaching them to look at how other kids are doing things, like in sports. Because one of the things we can affect, certainly by having other kids come over and play Legos with your kid. Now that's actually a really popular activity, a Lego play date. Yeah. But, if kids can make it on the soccer team or on the baseball or basketball team or a hockey team, whatever, that is a singular kind of experience for boys, because you get to be part of a group and it's group accomplishment. There's no experience that can replace hitting that 3-pointer, with a few seconds left, or, hitting a double play, or catching that pop fly, or scoring a goal in soccer games. Like, you are suddenly the most important person on the planet in that moment. And you go out for pizza after that experience, and a lot of our kids can't. So, there are some substitute activities like martial arts or individual sports like running or swimming, where there is some team accomplishment component to it. But that level of interaction, engagement, and investment of other kids in your kids is something that really is irreplaceable, and it's something that does shape adult behavior. And that if you didn't have that, it is a piece of your social learning that you're never going to get back.
Yeah, I could see definitely with the the different levels like you were talking about of like builder and creator and master and genius of that.
I love it when I see dads come into the Lego room, and for the first time a dad will come in and the other kids will be like, "Hey, your son did this." Not, "Oh, your son's the most annoying kid," or "Your son was the one who did."
Look at what he made. Yeah. It's amazing.
Your kid kicked the ball out of bounds when he wasn't supposed to. Like, they're just so discouraged by their son being the inept, clumsy, inappropriate, annoying kid, and then they come into Lego Club and they're a star. You know, like, your son did this, and look at the movie your son made, or look at the set your son built, and the other kids are admiring your kid, and they'll look on the dad's face for the first time. You see that twinkle in the eye effect, where the kid is noticing their dad is looking at them like, yeah, my son. You know, they're proud of them, and they have that twinkle in the eye look of like, wow, that's that chip off the old block. That's my kid. He accomplished something. You know. And these are dads that just get, dragged to IEP meetings and dragged into the behavior specialist office and the child psychologist's office. And they're just so sick of the whole nonsense. And then they see their kid accomplishing something. So I want to be able to capture that for them, something they can achieve on their own. And like I said, a lot of these dads are not particularly good at this stuff to begin with. And some of them are aware of that. Like, I spend a lot of time with dads where they'll just capitalize on like a family therapy session and really be asking me questions about, like, how do you become more effective socially? Like, I don't really have friends. How does that happen? Like, they're themselves somewhat blind to the whole process. Like, how do you get buddies?
Yeah, I used to always talk about it with some of the kids that I work with. It's not like you go to the grocery store and, like, aisle 4, you pick up some friends and, make sure to grab some self-esteem on your way out. Like, yeah, it's something you have to observe and learn and practice. And if I would imagine most of my listenership in the U.S., if we had a family that was like, how do I find a Lego club? Yeah, how do they find some of these things, or somebody that's trained in Lego-based therapy, or
Unless you live near Dr. Brittany Lyman in Pennsylvania, you're kind of out of luck. I mean, there might be a few groups running that I don't know about.
I happen to be in Pennsylvania. Where in PA?
Look up Dr. Lyman. I can tell you where she is exactly, but I'm sure she wouldn't mind. She was one of the people that used to run Lego clubs with me in New Jersey, and one of the few people I know that is still doing it. On the cover of the first book, you'll see a picture of G.W. Krause. He actually looks a bit like you. But he's now Captain Krause. Or Major Krause, I don't know, but he's in the military now and doesn't do Lego clubs anymore. But he was one of the best Lego therapists I ever met. A shout out to GW. Family calls him G-Dubs. But he's a guy with a real technical brain, engineering kind of a guy who just took to Lego therapy very naturally. And I had a bunch of other people involved. It was Sarah and GW and Brittany. And I've heard from, there's a few people over time that participated in the Lego Club that, with me, that are now out there, but very few of them actually do, Lego Club currently, with, like I said, the exception of
Dr. Lyman.
Yeah. I would say it is a bit of a problem, and I would try to address it by offering trainings. That would be pretty much all parents could really expect to do, is find somebody who's a clinician or an educator, because I have taught other non-psychologists to do this. Occupational therapists particularly like this approach. In fact, there was a book written by 2 speech pathologists that use this method.
So if people wanted to get in touch with you or check out your work or things like that, is there a particular place you send them, or social media stuff? Or
yeah, Brittany Lyman, by the way, is in Doylestown.
Okay, yeah, kind of outside Philly there.
Yeah. I would just say email me. That's what I have this huge contact list of people, like I said, in over 50 countries. And I try to help parents and other therapists get set up and running. And because of the manuals published and the second book, and there were some other studies, I now have a list of about 12 or 13 publications that were done by other people, including a handful of doctoral dissertations and master's theses.
Awesome.
So I think there's enough literature to get people going. And then if they have particular questions about how to get things, that's often the, like just the bootstrapping of it. How do you get from zero to being able to start a group?
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of practical things that people need to know about.
Sure. What email do you prefer they contact you on?
Just D LeGoff, my first initial and last name, so DLEGOFF, and then the number 1 at hotmail.com.
Okay. Awesome. And I always remind people it'll be in the show notes. So if you're, on the treadmill or driving right now, don't crash. Just check out the show notes later.
Oh yeah.
So.
But yeah, people find me on LinkedIn a lot, which is kind of annoying because I don't mean finding me on LinkedIn is annoying, but being able to share information freely on LinkedIn is a little clumsy. So heads up, if you're going to contact me, you can get hold of me on LinkedIn, but I'm there. But better if you email me, then it's easier for me to send you documents and stuff, or give you links to videos, because this isn't the first interview I've done, and there's a few of them that are published on YouTube. Sure. So there's a ton of stuff on YouTube, but heads up, most of it's not that good. Honestly, I don't want to be discouraging to people, but geez, you got to make it fun. So when I see people laying out Lego-based therapy, and it's a bunch of kids sort of stiffly sitting there waiting for the adult to tell them what to do next, you're not getting the basic idea. Mm-hmm. It's just like a free-for-all. The kids, honestly, the cool thing about Lego therapy is, and you don't call it that, right? It's Lego Club. The kids are here for Lego Club. They don't even want to stay in the waiting room. And
ready to go.
yeah. They come busting in. They don't want to be late. They drag their parents. If their parents are tired or whatever, they don't want to go. They have to take your kids to therapy. Because they're like, Dad, it's Lego Club, let's go. And they get them in the car and they drag them down there. And they run into the waiting room and they really want to participate. So you've got this willing audience, and they come every week. They want to know, can they come more than once a week? They're just. I've had kids walk in and go see my Lego room, and they say, Dr. Dan, can I live here?
Yeah, can I stay here?
I want to move in. Yeah, I just want to stay in this room. So there's that big draw, and they're very motivated to participate. And then you start putting up the hurdles, and you're like, you know what? You're going to have to do this with other people. You can't just come in here and build. And then they get so motivated. I've had kids take homework from Lego Club with their friends over the weekend. They're working on some project.
Wow.
They'll get together and bring it back the next week. They'll get together. I've had Lego birthday parties, Lego bar mitzvahs, Lego, graduation ceremonies, all kinds of things happen where kids get together.
Oh, I'm sure weddings. I'm sure, yeah.
But I mean, the Lego community has grown a lot since I started doing this, and people are much more aware that Lego has this kind of adult fan of Lego, the AFOL group. The Lego Brickomentary is really all about the AFOL community, but probably certainly a higher than average proportion of those people have some kind of autistic condition or social anxiety issue. But the neat thing is that is a social opportunity, and it is a way for them to engage and interact.
Definitely.
So I do support people developing connections with each other outside of the club.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I could see where that would be so huge. Like you said, just going back to the beginning with those two parents and those two kids in the waiting room of just like, oh my gosh, they spontaneously socialized and connected. Like parents being so thirsty for that and wanting their kids to develop those connections outside. So yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and I do think you could do this as a parent. Initially we were pretty snobby about it. We were thinking, really, you have to be a child psychologist to do this. You have to understand the nature of the different disabilities and how to coach the social interaction stuff. But over the years, I've seen some pretty good, fairly undertrained therapists, if you will, do this. And one of the guys that contacted me recently, in fact, was a guy named Greg Sugar. Shout out to Greg. He's in the New Jersey area, and he's just retiring from Bancroft. And or I'm not sure where he's retiring from, but he does want to get more back into Lego. He was one of my Lego therapists, and he was like a really, really overqualified educator, but he got it, and the kids loved him. He was just like really good at it, really understood the methodology, but he wasn't a child psychologist. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for parents to, run this kind of like Boy Scouts. We're going to have a Lego club. But if they're well informed, if they read the manual, if they read the outcome studies, if they look at what the actual methodology is and they don't just try to wing it, because I think you could get yourself into trouble. Because if you're going to try to really remediate something as complex as social development, you got to know what you're doing. Yeah. And you can't just be like, some of these kids are going to interact in really negative ways with each other, especially if you mix populations. Like, you get some acting out kind of dominant bullying kind of kids involved with kids with social anxiety. You could certainly make them worse. Yeah. So that would be the caution, is you don't want to do any harm. So initially we were very cautious about who was qualified to do this, and how would we, like, that was one of the reasons I didn't want to publish the manual. First of all, I don't want people going around doing Lego therapy who suck at it, because my name's attached to this. People are going to be like, oh, this Lego therapy thing that Dr. LeGoff invented, it's terrible. It makes my kid worse. It's so awful. And so when I see people doing it badly on YouTube, I feel like screaming, because I'm like, they're saying that they learned how to do this from me. That's not what I taught them. I didn't write about that.
I always say just the idea of like coming up with your own, treatment methodology and system. I mean, it's so amazing. I mean, just going back to that idea of like freestyling with Lego and what you've done with Lego-based therapy in terms of like freestyling with psychology and counseling and helping people is just so amazing. Obviously, so needed, and the outcomes that you've seen and just the people that are gravitating towards this, I think, bear out that it's a huge benefit. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and the outcome studies, like, I went and looked back at the 2004 study that we published, and I was kind of surprised by some of the data. I was like, you know what? There's the real stuff there. That was a pretty well structured study. We looked at these kids in an after-school program, and the duration of social interaction for them over a period of 12 weeks doubled. The average duration of their social interactions with kids doubled in 12 weeks. Wow. And to get that kind of impact from a once-a-week group,
that's unheard of.
It's pretty significant change in social functioning.
Yeah, wow.
That was kind of the results I was getting from feedback about from parents and from teachers, but it's really hard to capture. Like, how do you measure social function?
Sure.
You can't just measure like how many times a kid initiates contact with other kids, or how many friends they list, or something like that. You have to do something pretty sophisticated, like peer ratings or something like that. But measuring social competence is a complicated process, because you can't just look at friendship. You have to be able to negotiate the social world of the workplace. And I think that's the neat thing about Lego Club, is it kind of is a way to make friends, but it's also very much like a work environment. And it's sometimes it's like a boardroom, sometimes it's like a think tank, and sometimes it's like a shop floor, And so there's a sort of levels of experience that are relevant to many social environments, including the workplace and the playground.
Yeah, like I was saying, it's just so awesome to have stumbled across it and gotten the opportunity to talk with you about it. So I definitely want to stay in touch and keep an ear out for the book and just what you're doing. I've been, telling a lot of people about, like, man, this stuff is awesome. Like, you need to check this out. This could be life changing for so many families and so many people. So, towards that end, I will stay in touch with you, hopefully to have you back on at some point, maybe when the other book comes out, when you get the pile of papers put together. So take care, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thanks. I will. You too.
Well, OTC listeners, that wraps up episode 50. Thank you again for stopping by our little corner of the podcast world and joining us for the episode. I look forward to bringing you episode 51 in a few weeks. Take care and stay safe. Well, if you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're catching this podcast. You can check out detailed show notes and any other resources given in the show at www.pfsonthecouch.com. If you'd like to stay up to date on upcoming episodes, guests, or contribute questions to the show, be sure to follow along on any of your favorite social media platforms. The author and host of this podcast is not engaged in a therapeutic relationship with the listener and cannot give counseling advice without a confidential appointment. Listeners should be sure to consult with a licensed therapist in their area or seek emergency medical attention if they are experiencing psychological difficulty. A special thanks to the band The Topsy-Turvies for the show theme song. Their song, Like a Living Dead, can be found at topsyturvies.bandcamp.com. The bump interview track was the song 1973 by Bruno E. The author and host of this podcast is John Dennis. Special thanks to show editor Casey Lehman and show producer Trevor Groff.